Hello, my name is Aaron Munns. I'm the Veterans Director at the Mesothelioma Center at asbestos.com. Today we're going to talk about what financial assistance is available for veterans diagnosed with cancer due to asbestos exposure. I've been the Veterans Director here since 2015. Before that, I served on active duty in the Army as an armor officer for over 9 years. In the past 10 years, I have assisted over 2,000 veterans who have been diagnosed with asbestos-related illnesses, and connected and trained over 4,000 veteran service officers around the country on how to successfully file asbestos-related disability claims with the VA. I've also helped connect hundreds of veterans to legal teams who can help pursue compensation for asbestos exposure in addition or outside of VA benefits that they may qualify for. Today we're going to talk about both. So veterans who are diagnosed with cancer due to asbestos exposure may have multiple options for compensation, benefits, and financial assistance. The first is through the VA. If the majority of a veteran's exposure to asbestos occurred while they were serving on active duty in the military, they may be qualified for service-connected VA disability compensation. This is a monthly benefit that entitles the veteran to tax-free compensation, as well as access and free medical care for those conditions from the Veterans Health Administration. They may also be qualified for asbestos trust funds and litigation. This is pursued separate from the VA, in addition to VA benefits, working with an attorney who specializes in asbestos litigation. The cancers that the VA recognizes as being caused by asbestos include mesothelioma. There's 4 different types of mesothelioma cancer. The most common affects the lining around the lungs, the pleural lining. So pleural mesothelioma affects approximately 85% of all mesothelioma diagnoses. And there's about 2,500 diagnoses in the United States each year, and over 30% of those diagnoses are military veterans. And that's because so much asbestos was used across all branches of the military for from the 1940s through the 1980s. Mesothelioma can also affect the lining around the abdominal organs, the peritoneum. This affects approximately 15% of all mesothelioma diagnoses. And then 2 very rare types of mesothelioma, pericardial, which affects the lining around the heart, and testicular mesothelioma, both have between 1 and 5 diagnoses each year in the United States. Extremely rare, but over the last decade, I've helped veterans with both conditions. The most common cancer caused by asbestos exposure is lung cancer. This affects hundreds, if not thousands, of lung cancer diagnoses each year are related or connected to asbestos exposure. Now, asbestos does not have to be the only cause, as many veterans have exposure to other toxins that may cause lung cancer, including a history of smoking. But asbestos has to be a contributing cause of the cancer. The VA also recognizes that cancers of the bronchus, the bronchial tubes that go from the throat into the lungs, gastrointestinal tract to include the stomach, the esophagus, and the intestines and colon, the larynx in the throat, the pharynx in the back of the nasal passages entering into the upper part of the throat, and the urogenital system. So the kidneys, the bladder, and with the exception of the prostate. For women, female veterans, asbestos can also be a cause of ovarian cancer. For the asbestos trust funds and litigation, there's a more limited scope of what they're able to pursue. Most law firms that work in this space primarily pursue claims for mesothelioma, pleural mesothelioma, and peritoneal mesothelioma. And that's because they can directly prove that asbestos is an exclusive cause of those cancers, meaning that they can prove this fact in court and hold the companies that manufacture the asbestos products that cause that cancer directly responsible. They can also do this for lung cancer. Although lung cancer, like I mentioned, may have multiple causes, they can show that asbestos accelerated or increased the risk of developing lung cancer. There are a handful of firms in the country who will also pursue other types of cancer for compensation, and these include pharyngeal cancer, laryngeal cancer, esophageal cancer, and stomach cancer caused by exposure to asbestos. For VA disability, you may be eligible for VA disability depending on your character of discharge, assuming that you have a honorable, general, other than honorable, but under honorable conditions discharge, you're eligible for disability. For VA benefits, you may be eligible for service-connected disability. If you have a diagnosis of one of the conditions I mentioned on the previous slide, and your doctor believes that asbestos was a contributing cause. The VA refers to this as the medical nexus. Nexus is the link between your current diagnosis and what may have caused it. You also have to be able to prove that the majority of your lifetime exposure to asbestos occurred on active duty. The VA does not consider National Guard or Reserve training as active duty for VA benefits. There are no time limits for any diagnosis with the military. So if you were diagnosed with bladder cancer 10 years ago, you can still pursue disability benefits if you can connect, if you have the medical records, the medical nexus, and we can work with you to help you understand how and when you were exposed. The current disability benefits that were updated in December of 2024 that cover 2025 for 100% disability and VA healthcare, a veteran would receive a little over $3,800 a month, tax-free. A veteran and a spouse receive just over $4,000 a month. If the veteran's claim is approved or the cause of death is related to their asbestos cancer, their surviving spouse would receive $1,600, a little over $1,600 a month, and that would continue for the rest of the spouse's life. For asbestos trust funds and litigation, it's a little bit different. The law firms file for compensation against specific companies that manufacture the products and materials that you were exposed to. They don't sue the military or your employer. If you had civilian exposure, they can identify the specific products that you worked with in the military, as well as before or after your service. Many veterans who we've worked with over the past decade have had exposure in the military and in the civilian sector. The attorneys can look at all of the exposure throughout a lifetime and file claims against all of those different companies. There are time limits, though. The statute of limitations begins when you're diagnosed with a cancer. So if you're having symptoms and you're getting testing done and then you have that surgical biopsy and they take a sample of a tissue sample of the cancer cells, the day that they tell you that you have cancer is the day that the clock begins for a legal claim. In most states, the statute of limitations is between 2 and 3 years from the date of your diagnosis. There are some states with shorter 1-year limits, and the longest time limit in the country is 6 years from the date of diagnosis. So if you've been diagnosed with a cancer caused by asbestos and have not spoken to an attorney, I would recommend doing that sooner than later to make sure that you don't miss out on the possibility of receiving some compensation. The compensation amounts also vary. The average settlement for a mesothelioma claim, and again, it's a very rare cancer, 2,500 cases a year, but again, over 30%, or about approximately 800, are veterans. The average settlement is between $1 and $2 million. A lung cancer settlement is between $100,000 and $400,000. The difference is how this money will be passed to your family. Unfortunately, mesothelioma is an aggressive and terminal disease. I've spoken to veterans who have been survivors for 15 years or more. I've also spoken to veterans who passed away shortly after their diagnosis. So if you begin a legal claim and then pass away, you can designate who that money goes to. So with a VA disability claim, if you do not have a surviving spouse, that ends when you pass. The VA doesn't pay any additional funds other than some potential burial expense reimbursement and funeral expenses. But for the civilian legal claim, all of that money will go to whoever you designate. Children, grandchildren, a charity of your choice. It can be passed on. So how do we help? So we help veterans and veteran service officers understand the VA claims development, understand how to get the right diagnosis, how to speak to the doctor to get the correct medical nexus statement, and help identify and understand where and when a veteran may have been exposed to asbestos in the military and as a civilian. And we can also help with exposure summaries. And that's basically your personal narrative of how and when you were exposed to asbestos throughout your lifetime, and we use that to help to submit with your disability claim with your veteran service officer to show that the majority of your lifetime exposure occurred in the military. If you are eligible for legal claims for compensation, we can recommend a law firm if you're eligible. The firms that we have researched and connected with over the years understand military exposure and are experts in filing for compensation from military exposure to asbestos. They also all have veterans on their staff. Many law firms that we found don't want you to file a VA claim because it may make their legal claim a little bit more difficult or challenging, or may limit what they're able to pursue. The firms that we have identified don't do that. And they're also going to maximize the financial help for you and your family. So if this is something that you need more information about, please let us know and we can help. You can contact me at vetoutreach@asbestos.com. You can also call me at 888-327-8271. You can check out more of my YouTube videos with understanding how to successfully file a disability claim, how to write an exposure summary, understanding how to get the right diagnosis, or how to talk to your doctor about medical nexus statements. For tips on how to get your claim approved, check out this video right here. Please reach out to me and let me know how I may be able to help.